Jai Jinendra. Welcome to Adults Class 2, Practical Applications of Jainism. Let's start with the Nokar mantra. Namo Arihantanam, Namo Siddhanam, Namo Ayaryanam, Namo Ujayanam, Namo Luvaisavasanam. Eso Panchadmokaro Sapapava Panasano Mangalancha Savesim Paramam Have Mangala. Well, we're back after a 2-week break. Did anybody open the book?
I opened it.
Oh, you opened the book? Nice. That's very good. What did you read and what did you learn?
I read about what you talked about, karma. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That's great.
About the karma.
Yeah, it's very hard to open a book, as we know. It's one of the hardest things we'll ever do. But the good thing is that there is a chapter in the book about how important it is to open the book. The problem is that it's in the book. So I'm not sure it's doing a lot of good in the book. The chapter is Swadhyay. For me, it's chapter 11. For you, it might be a different chapter. Swadhyay means study of the self. That is, sva means self, and adhyaya means study. It doesn't mean self-study. Sometimes the book says self-study. That's different. Self-study is studying by yourself. Study of the self is studying your soul, because you are a soul. So, study of the self involves looking into your own nature to find out your weaknesses, like anger, ego, deceit, greed, attachments, cravings, jealousy, and hatred. Not only do you look for your weaknesses, you look for your strengths when you do Swadhyay. Your straightforwardness, compassion, nonviolence, detachment, contentment, forgiveness, and equanimity. The fruit of engaging in Swadhyay is, of course, self-realization. And the book has some very nice things to say about Swadhyay. That is, spiritual vigilance, i.e. awakening of the consciousness and its constant alertness, is an essential constituent of Swadhyay. Only he who is alert can be vigilant. Only he who is vigilant can concentrate. And only he who is able to concentrate can practice Swadhyay. One who is not vigilant is prone to be assailed by fear from all directions. On the other hand, one who is alert and hence fully vigilant is never perturbed by fear. And I think you can replace vigilant with the word knowledge there. We are fearful of what we don't know. And that's why we're fearful of death. That's why learning about the truth of your soul and what happens when you die can make this fear of death go away completely. You can come to accept it and be ready for your next life. And I think that's right. I think that fear leads to these other things like anger, ego, deceit, and greed. You know, Layla just learned the story, and they're having a test on it right now, about Mahavir's life. And once he was on the playground, and one of the kids turns into a demon, and he jumps on the demon's back and starts beating the demon. And I hated this story. I still kind of don't like the story, because we're all about nonviolence. So why are we celebrating Mahavir beating this demon? And their book says it's about courageousness. And I was like, okay, why is courageousness better than nonviolence? Why are we doing that? And I've come to terms with the story in the fact that, yes, the other kids who are fearful, when you're fearful, you do things that will increase your karma, you react out of anger, ego, deceit, and greed when you're fearful. You commit more violence when you're fearful than when you're brave. How you doing?
Good, thanks.
But the problem is in that story, he was brave and he committed violence. It should be some kind of different story where he was brave and he did something and a fearful person would have committed violence. I still don't like the story, but they teach it all the time.
Maybe hopefully the demon is a metaphor for one of these issues: anger, greed, ego, or deceit, right?
Right.
If
So
it is- if
we're
it's a
using,
metaphor for-
we're gonna beat our anger, right?
Exactly.
That's
Hopefully
good.
that's the case.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That
it could be just
equates well
because
to-
it was his childhood, but as he gets older, and then when the whole Chankoshi thing happened, which is
Right.
probably the worse than that, but he at that time had learned that how to control the anger.
Right.
So maybe it's just phases of him getting to that level.
Okay, that's great. So it shows progress, his
Right.
progress in life. That's great. The book says that Swadhyay is one of our internal taps. And it's one of the least painful and most rewarding taps. And that's true. I'd rather open the book than fast, and I'd rather open the book than do yoga. I'd rather open the book than do a lot of things. So it is one of the least painful and most rewarding. Okay, so obstacles to opening the book. The book lists maybe 5 obstacles to opening the book. Ego, anger, ignorance, an unhealthy body, and laziness. I can see how ego is an obstacle. You say, I know everything. I don't really need to open the book, because you have an ego like that. But how is anger an obstacle to Swadhyay? How is anger an obstacle to opening the book?
Again, the same thing, like ego, like everything bad's gonna happen to me and it has been happening to me,
Mhm.
so the book's not gonna make any difference, so I'm not gonna open it.
Right,
That's the anger.
right.
Or if you take a case of our children, right, especially when they are in the revolt phase or rebellion phase rather, I would say, if you tell them to open the book, they are a rebel. They're like, since they have told me not to open the book, I will not open the book anymore. So I can imagine that scenario happening.
Right.
Angry and not opening the book.
I think what happens is that when we open the book, we get mad at ourselves. And that causes us to not want to do it because of those negative feelings. We understand that we're supposed to be doing all these things. The number one thing when we open the book is, how can anybody do all of this? How can I change my life to do all of this stuff? I have to go to work every day. I have the kids. I got to do this. I have to do so much stuff. How can, I think we get, let's see if we can mute. Can we mute ourselves online? Thank you. So I think that's what happens. We get angry at ourselves when we open the book, and those feelings cause us to not open the book further.
I think they're not aware. They're not listening.
Is there an option to mute everyone?
I can't mute
The
everybody.
second button. The second button. Timid,
Yes.
if you hover over the photo, the second button.
Oh, okay.
There it is. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so ignorance, I think, is easy to understand. You don't know what's in the book, so you don't open the book, right? But an unhealthy body? Why would an unhealthy body prevent you from doing Swadhyay or opening the book? Laziness, I can see, well, you're lazy, you don't open the book. But an unhealthy body?
Maybe eyesight.
Okay.
Can't read it, and
Right.
it strains.
Yeah.
And for Swadhyay, you have to basically sit straight and, right? Like, some people just cannot.
I think that's right too. I think it's like if you're,
January 11th, you're going to be here?
maybe,
No, I want you to be here.
okay, I'll have to check the calendar.
Yeah.
So I think that's right. I think if you're obese, if you have bad eyesight, if you can't sit up, if you can't, maintain a posture correctly, it's hard to study something. There is some kind of physical component to studying that is sitting down and doing the thing for an hour, that some people might not be able to do. So I think that's right. An unhealthy body is an obstacle to Swadhyay. And for the people that say, the body is different from the soul and I'm justified in not doing exercise and letting myself go and things like that because I want to prove to myself the body is different from the soul, that's absolutely wrong, and this is why it's wrong. An unhealthy body is a obstacle to doing Swadhyay. Next, the book says that there are 7 essentials to start Swadhyay, which is too many. The essentials are determination. Okay, we have to have determination to start. Making self-improvement a top priority. Okay, great. We want to make self-improvement a top priority. That's why we're doing Swadhyay. An open mind. I think that's easy. An open mind. A strong desire to know or learn. I think that's another easy one. A strong desire to practice after knowledge is acquired. That's a hard one. You have a desire to practice. I mean, sometimes I have a desire to know, but then I don't really have a desire to do anything after that. I like to accumulate knowledge and not do anything with it after that. Finding time and firm faith in the Tirthankar's teachings. That's the hard one. That's why we're all here. That's the whole game. It's finding the time to implement the teachings. That's what this class is all about.
So then this is also considered Swadhyay or it has to be a book?
Absolutely. This is considered Swadhyay. What you're doing right now is considered Swadhyay. And so Swadhyay is traditionally divided into 5 parts. You study the text. You open the book and you study the book. Vachna. Next, Pruchna. You ask questions. Next, Parvatana. You repeat the text and its meanings. This people overlook, but I've had a lot of success with this. Things I don't understand, I repeat over and over in my mind and try to understand it. And this takes like years. There's this joke that I never understood. And the joke is about comedians being the best at ice cream eating competitions. And it's on this album that I like to listen to, this comedy album. And I never understood it. And so I turn it over occasionally in my mind. Does anybody get the joke? Comedians at their best are the best at eating ice cream competitions because they're always holding microphones, which look exactly like an ice cream cone. I didn't understand this joke for years. And it's like a visual joke, so the people in the audience got it. But because it was on a CD that I have, I never got it. But I turned it over in my mind and I got it eventually. There's another famous story about people say knowledge is power, right? And after anybody says knowledge is power, somebody says Francis Bacon. But what does France being bacon have to do with knowledge being power? So this person turned it over in his mind, like, why does everybody say Francis Bacon? That's not the next part of the phrase. The phrase is knowledge is power. Why is Francis Bacon? Why do they say that? And everybody seems to agree that Francis Bacon. But it turns out that Francis Bacon is the person that said that. And the person realized it after meeting someone named Francis. So if you turn something over in your mind constantly, you will start to understand it. Next is anupreksha, that is contemplating and reflecting on the meaning of the text. That's important. A lot of children don't understand that. That you can read the text just fine, but you might not understand what it means. Sometimes when I'm reading, I read whole pages and I go back, I don't remember anything I read. Like, I got to go back and reread that. My mind was somewhere else. You have to understand what you read. And next is dharmakata, that is listening and engaging in spiritual discussions.
We got like 3 out of 5. That's a good score.
The questions or comments on that? Okay, so next the book has a list of the purpose of Swadhyay, which is great, but it's kind of a weird and eclectic list. Acquire right faith or knowledge and conduct. Okay, great. Know the difference between right and wrong. Perfect, I love that. Resolve doubts, remove blind faith, and eradicate false views. Great, when we question and when we discuss, we resolve our doubts. Remove yourself from wasteful activities. Great, when you do Swadhyay, you're not doing other things that are worse that you could be doing. Depart from the wrong companies and get involved with good people. Great. We're all involved with good people here. We're not hanging out with the bad people outside. Learn the importance of practicing right knowledge. That's a repeat. Enhance concentration, intelligence, and self-control. Improve the results of meditation. Not sure why that's there. Realize that the body and soul are different. Develop introspection. Begin to develop forgiveness, modesty, candor, contentment, truthfulness, self-restraint. These are all just Jain principles, so I don't understand why these are in the list. It might as well just say learn Jainism. Commence purification of the conscious mind by shedding karma. Again, another principle. Modify, change, improve, and develop equanimity. Another Jain principle. So it's kind of a weird list that the book put together. I would revisit that. Questions or comments about that? So, you may not know, but when you read a text, there are different ways to read it. And depending on the text, you should read it differently. Now, you might be thinking, there's only one way to read it. But that's not true. And we'll find out that there are 12 ways to read something, maybe? Okay, so the first one is called linear reading. It's what you think about as reading. You read something from the beginning to the end, and you try to understand the author's full argument, their explanation, or the story. And you'd use linear reading for history and novels and biographies. That's what you use it for. The next is question-based reading. You jump to specific points in the text based on the question that you have. And so that's used for, like, if you want to do legal work or medical work, if you have like if you want to cook something, you jump to that page in the textbook. So that's great for some things in Jainism. If you have a particular question, you just jump to that page, and I encourage you to do that. That's one easy way to open the book, because you might look at the book and you'd be like, this is crazy. don't even know where to begin. But maybe a great place to begin is with whatever question you have. If you have a question about karma, you can just read the book where it talks about karma. A third way is to read and actively take notes. That is, you learn by rewriting the things in your own words, and you add your own summaries and things like that. And so you read better by writing.
Yeah, taking notes.
Right. Number 4 is annotation. So it's kind of like taking notes, but you highlight, you underline important things, and you come back to them. Number 5 is repeated review. A lot of people don't do this. And this is important to teach our children when they're studying. So they study, and then a week later, they study the same thing. So move things from short-term memory to long-term memory. And so, of course, this is good for examination, but it's also good when you're learning a language or you're reading nonfiction. You should read repeatedly. Next is mapping. It's another visual guide. Unlike note-taking, you turn the ideas into flowcharts, pictures, outlines, anything kind of a visual chart. You map the concepts of the book into a diagram. And the book has the book has a couple diagrams, which are very helpful. The next is example-driven learning. That is, you focus on examples and case studies rather than the explanations. So a lot of people like this. And this is good for us because we can apply Jain principles to our life via examples. And we can think about examples to apply these principles to. The next is comparative reading. That is, there's a lot to be gained by reading different books on the same subject. One author might stress one thing, one author might discount another thing, and you can see, you can synthesize across the two things or more things, and that gives you mastery over that. So obviously we focus on the one book, but there are lots of Jain texts you can read. And they'll, in fact, you'd be surprised, they contradict the book. It's not always that they agree. And where they contradict is a great place for you to dive deeper. Well, why is this guy saying this thing, this guy saying this thing? Why does Timur hate the story about Mahavir, but other people like the story about Mahavir? Number 10 is reflection. You can think about how the ideas in the book apply to your life. That was 9. 10 is practice-oriented. You learn a step, you try it. You learn another step, you try it. That's great for us too. We can learn about non-lying and decide we're going to try that for 2 weeks. Then we can learn about non-violence and we can try that for 2 weeks. A practice-oriented approach. The next one is one I like a lot, is that you activate another sense by using audio of the text that you're doing. I love this. I think there's a lot of benefit to be had to it. I listen, in addition to this podcast, I listen to audiobooks on the way to work. And the thing that I noticed is that I was listening to what is considered a pretty difficult read, that is Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. And I remember having trouble with it, maybe like 5-6 years ago. And I got it on audiobook, and boy, it was a breeze. Okay? Because the narration is really an art. And there's a lot of value that the narrator adds. And I thought about it, and I realized why. And it was, I cared more deeply because I heard the feeling in the narrator's voice. And because I cared more deeply, I was able to pay attention better. Because it wasn't something, when you read, I would read in my voice. And I don't act it out, right? I don't have a lot of inflection in my voice, in my head when I read. But the narrator does. And I cared about that. And because I cared about that, I was able to complete the text. And so I really think that that helps. And the last one is group discussion. So that's what we're doing right now. So believe it or not, there are 12 ways to read. Okay, you might have thought there weren't, but there are. And the problem is that I mentioned that some things were good for our book and some things aren't. But even within the chapters, different ways of reading the chapters are important. So chapters 1 through 3, the God, the universe, and the Panchmarmesti, well, we're going to annotate that, right? We're going to write in the margins, right? Well, but when we start talking about, the vows, the devotion, and the meditation, we have to turn to reflective reading, right? When we talk about 14 Gunasthanaks, we got to write that down. We got to do the chart, right? When we talk about Anikantvad, we have no idea what that means. That is like college level education in Jainism. So we have to look to another text. We have to compare. Well, I don't understand this. What did this guy say about Anikantvad? And what did that guy say about Anikantvad? And when we're talking about the history of Jainism, we have to just do linear reading, right? Front to back and try to understand it. So that's part of the problem of why it's so hard to open the book, is that you may not realize that as the chapter changes, your reading has to change too. Questions or comments about that? I had no idea there were so many styles of reading. Did anybody know
Maybe
that?
I have a comment and a question. Maybe
Yeah.
I'll ask the question first. Do we have an audio book version of the book?
We do not.
We
No.
don't. Maybe
I
that's something
think
that
on
we
the
can think about.
website there might be the audio of the book.
I'm sure that we could easily make
Yeah,
a
there is a
speech to
called,
text.
notebook LLM. There is
Text to
this thing.
speech. Yeah. I'm sure that we could easily do that, but that won't make you care.
Yeah.
That won't like a narrator would.
That's fair
That
enough.
won't make you care.
Yeah,
I don't think we're there yet.
It's not
They-
sophisticated enough.
They
Yeah.
can't add that nuance. It's very good.
Yeah.
It's not like the computer voice that you're used to. It's
Right.
like an Alexa voice.
Right.
Do you care about Alexa or Siri? Are they
Maybe for
inflective
short
enough for you to
instructions,
care?
but not long term, right? Yeah.
Maybe if we asked Alexa to read chapter 1 of the book, do you think that she could do it enough for us to care? Maybe.
Maybe. I mean, especially for the kids, right? I think it's going to be very difficult to push the kids to read this. It's already difficult to push them to read basic stuff.
Right. Right.
So that could help. Plus, what I've found, by the way, a good hack that just works for me is whenever I'm reading a book, I've finished reading the book, but retention is a problem sometimes.
Right.
So then listening to the audible version of the same book, it's amazing.
Right.
You know, your retention significantly goes up.
Yeah, so you're doing
Or
a
vice
couple
versa,
things. Yeah,
right?
you're doing the audio, you're activating a different sense. You're also doing repetition,
Exactly.
right? So yeah, you're doing a couple things there.
Yeah.
Other questions or comments? You know, when you read something, people think it's just one way because you can't respond to the author. So people just think it's one-way communication. It's just the author is communicating to you and that's it. But actually it's not true. Anytime you perform any type of communication, it's two-way in your mind. The author won't get what mental things you're saying about the book, but you are communicating with them. And so what I always recommend people to do if they don't believe that is to just put a picture of the author, or if you're playing a video game, put a picture of the developer right next to you, and then you start talking to it. And you're like, what are you doing here? I don't understand what you're trying to say here. This chapter sucks. You'll start doing that. And it's a two-way communication. If you die in a video game, you're like, you got me again, and you shake your fist at the picture, right? It's actually, and then you'll start to realize that now you're doing this active reading when you participate in this two-way. Even though the author can't hear you, you're still communicating with them. And then you're doing this, and that pulls you out of this passive reading, not even understanding the words on the page, because you're in a conversation with them. And you say, hey, this is great. I love this. I hope that the book ends like this. It ends as strongly as it starts. And so you'll realize that. Well, I'm glad you mentioned kids, because kids learn a little bit differently, and I realized that we could all learn from kids. We could all start with the way that kids learn. Kids learn things from book differently, and so one of the ways is that kids are very picture-based. So they rely heavily on images. And so you'll see, in this book, almost every page has an image. Almost everyone. Yeah, basically everyone. And look, sometimes they even put the text just inside the picture. Right? And so they'll look at the picture first, way before they look at the words. And if you've ever tried to learn another language, you'll realize that this is actually a very good way to do it, because it will allow you to, as they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. It will allow you to give physical presence to abstract concepts. So it might be easy to describe a scene between two people, but you don't get the context. But in the picture you see, they're in the kitchen, it's like a domestic thing, they must be husband and wife. And you didn't get all that from the words, right? When you were supposed to. You didn't pick up on all that. Yeah. But in the picture you pick up on that. So kids learn about pictures because they create mental anchors, they make abstract ideas concrete, and they reduce the cognitive load. You don't have to think about it as much when it's a picture. You just look at the picture. So for what works for kids is also chunking. That is, this is not going to work for a kid. It's too much text in a row, right? So you need headings, subheadings, you need bold text, you need italic text, because you need to make it easy to get to the end of whatever passage you're on. And then putting a picture there is a good way to do that. See how these are very short right here? Even the book is smaller, because even this size book is just way too much. And so the reason we're talking about this is because it might help you. So some you might find this is too much. I'm just going to read a little bit. I'm going to chunk it, just like a child would.
I literally realized this last week. My wife and I have been pushing our two girls to read, and just by coincidence, and they never picked it up. Just by coincidence, we were at a friend's place last weekend, and they had a comic book. and my youngest one picked up the book, and like other kids were playing upstairs and she was downstairs just reading the book,
Right.
and she literally finished 75% of the book in those 3 hours that we were there. And that clicked, that I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
why haven't we tried this?
Right.
This comic book is a no-brainer.
Because of the picture, she read the most words she's ever read in
And-
one interrupted time.
And the smaller
100%.
text.
And
Smaller
I was
text.
so impressed with her focus. Like I've never seen her focus for 3 hours at a stretch,
Right.
and that blew my mind.
Yeah, you know what? I always laugh that our little one gets homework and they get these worksheet pages.
Yeah.
And at the beginning, there's always a picture of like a kid doing the problem with like a pencil and like maybe a ruler sometimes or maybe a calculator. And I would always laugh because like, what is this for? You know, what is it? This is like wasting space on, it's math. Like, why do you have a picture about it? But I realized like, oh, that gets the kid going. It's like, oh, that kid's doing it. You know, I can do it. You know, things like that. So now I don't laugh at that. Now it's actually, it's probably based on a lot of research about kids learning.
Yeah, and then I went to my childhood. You know, how I built a reading habit was through comic books. You know, for folks who grew up in India, you know, Chacha Chaudhary and
Yeah.
Twinkle Digest and all those are the things we used to read, and how we got hooked to reading because of that. So
And I think
it's weird that we know some of the answers, but like if we have to experience, we have to go through an experience or this session to
Right.
realize that's how it should be done.
for younger kids especially, if they don't understand the story or if they are not capable to read all the words or everything, at least they can get the gist of the story by just looking at the sequence of the pictures, and that will motivate them to learn, right? And
Exactly.
that's why all these dog man, Captain Underpants, they are so
Yeah,
popular.
yeah.
Dog man.
And one more.
The other item, if you want to get the kids to read, like Harry Potter. Remember
Oh,
the
yeah.
Harry Potter? Because they knew that was turning into a movie.
Right.
So
Yeah.
they're reading. They're like, hey,
Before,
then
yeah.
you can see the movie.
Correct.
So then that visualization, then when you're watching it, they're like, oh no, that was now in the book. So you could see what their retention was.
Yeah.
So if you start
agree.
doing, books that turn into movies,
Movies, yeah.
that's awesome.
I think that's a good idea.
That's a-
Yeah.
So we did for my older one, we made him see, so we started with the book first, but he couldn't get into it. So then we let him watch the first movie,
Uh-huh.
so then he can associate with everything. Then he read the first and second book, and then he started watching a
Second
movie.
movie.
So then he'll read the third book, then he can watch a movie.
Well, yeah.
So then we flipped it. But first one we let him watch a movie so he can associate all the
Oh.
characters, the scene and everything. And then now he loves that book that
Yeah.
probably he has read the whole set 2 to 3 times, and then just 6, 7 movie he has read that over 10 times. Now that's his favorite book to read now.
Yeah. So that's the other good concept you
Yeah.
just mentioned. Rereading books kind of reinforces
Oh, yeah.
the concept. And I started rereading books that I go, I read that 3 years ago. Let me go reread it. And the second time around, it's like, hey,
You pick up on the
Some new-
the new
Yeah.
the information that was there, but you didn't
Yeah.
pick it up in the first time.
Yeah.
You start seeing it, right? So
Yeah.
There's a lot of aha moments the second
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
That's right.
My kids started reading Hail Mary.
mhm.
And it's about an engineer who just is in the space. And then I found out that they're turning it into a movie. So I can't now wait until it comes out in March of 2026. Project Hail Mary.
Project Calvary.
And the guy is an engineer. So if you got a kid who's like a science or wants to be a doctor, see if you can get a where there's a doctor in the movie or the book.
Right.
He'll kind of attach. Or a lawyer, right?
Project Hail Mary is a
Project Hail Mary. Yeah. But it's a big book. It's intimidating book. But the guy is an engineer, and he's discovering along the way, and his understanding is very well designed.
Of course, kids learn through repetition, as we discussed. They also learn through interactiveness, right? They want to draw in the book. They need to draw in the book to exert control over the book. And so that's why in our kids' homework, it's always like, connect these pictures or fill in the blank or things like that, right? And so by making it interactive, maybe there's some way we can make our book interactive.
Yeah.
And kids learn based on stories. That's not just kids, that's everybody. As we've discussed many times about the power of stories, if you wanted to encode any kind of piece of information and have it last as long as possible. It is not to write it down and, bury it deep underground until people find it in 200 years. No. It is encode that piece of information in a story, because we have stories from 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
That information perhaps has changed slightly, but the core of the information is still there. And that is the best way to learn anything, because your human brain is hardwired to respond to stories. Another way that kids learn is guided reading with an adult or a teacher with you. So you ask the kids questions about what they're reading, like, oh, why do you think he did that? Or what happened there? Or, what do you think happens next? That's the good one. What do you think happens next? That's actually one of the best questions you can ask your kid while they're reading a book, because then they learn to associate the past with the future, and then they try to get into the author's mind, and then they associate it with other books, like, oh, what happened in that other book that might let me know what happens next in this book. So that you should always ask your child that when reading a book. Same thing that we talked about, highlighting and annotations. Same thing, making connections to real life that we talked about. Kids like to move. Okay, when somehow we stop moving when we get older, but kids like to move. And when they read a story, they want to be the character and act out the character and play the character. And so we should do that with them. You're Harry Potter and I'm Hermione, and let's go on our brooms. So a lot of information people experience through movement. A lot of dancers know that, and we don't know that. It is a form of movement. Is communication. Movement is art. You can communicate via movement, and if we learn something, we can learn something via movement. Social group, learning in a group, we talked about that, of course, goes for kids. Kids love emotion-based encoding, and that comes from the form of something surprising. When you're a kid, we all love the Guinness Book of World Records, because that was the best of the best. And that was surprising. It was a cool, crazy fact. We love this 1,000 books of crazy facts about dinosaurs, because it's emotion-based learning, right?
It was like more fact-based than emotion-based.
No, it's surprising. It's, hey, Mom, did you know that the T-Rex isn't the biggest dinosaur? It's actually this one. It's a fact. But we encoded it in emotions.
Yeah.
So you're sneaking the learning of the facts in to the emotions.
One of the reasons why Jurassic Park was such a big hit, because he encoded a lot of surprises.
Right.
A lot of fearful
Right.
surprises that kids enjoy.
Right. And one of the ways we can do that is through the stories. I think our stories are great. The stories in the book, they're great. They're the bones of a story. We could put a lot more emotion in the story. We could write a story where at the end, when Gautam Swami realizes that his attachment to Mahavir was the last thing holding him back, we would start crying at the end. Okay, we could write a story like that. It's not written like that in the book, but we could do that. That might be a good goal for us to do, is to write an emotional story, put emotion into the story, because we have them. We might as well try to use them to our advantage to learn something. And goal-oriented practice, you might gamify reading. That is, use stickers, use checkboxes, use rewards, use things like that. Kids respond to that a lot. And so that's how we might get a kid to practice Swadhyay. But more importantly, that's how we might do it ourselves if we understand that, oh, maybe I need pictures in my book. It's no shame in that, right? Maybe I want... There are Jainism books with pictures on every other page that are for adults, that are not written in the language for children. And so maybe that's better than opening this book. This book doesn't have a lot of pictures.
I would prefer that.
And so that's why we have to put our ego to the side. Maybe I do need to chunk it. Maybe I can't read a chapter a week. Okay, maybe I do need to chunk it. Right? Put my ego to the side. And ego is the listed first as the obstacle towards Swadhyay, right? And so that's why I'm not telling you this just for your children. I'm telling it to you for yourself as well.
How about the concept they're teaching in schools is mind mapping, right? Which is what you talked about.
Right.
Visualization.
Right.
Taking each chapter and mapping it out, because they're all within it. They're interconnected.
Right.
So that would help out.
Yeah, absolutely. There's two kind of concepts to that. The first is creating a mapping, that is turning a text into a chart. So you have turned a text into like a flow chart or into a diagram, not a list, not a bullet point, but an actual diagram where the positions of the things mean something. And it's usually, you all know what flow charts look like. I'm trying to find one in the book here. There's not that many, but the ones that are there are
If you
pretty
think
good.
about karma theory, it's you can map that out really well.
Yeah.
Book has that.
It has that,
I
yeah.
think chapter 17 was.
So that's one of the things about the mental mapping. Oh man, Bhavin knows the chapter number and everything.
Good job.
That's the only
He's
thing.
reading.
He's right. Oh, it's chapter 17. Oh my God, I can't believe he's right. Yeah, it's right
Someone
there.
is
Right?
opening book. See?
See,
Right.
I don't know anything.
So that's one kind of
Somebody's
mental
gonna
mapping.
map his name.
There's another thing people talk about when they talk about conceptual mapping, and it's a bit harder to explain, but I'm going to try my best. Your map has a type, your mind has a type of map to it. There is an organizational structure in your mind. And when you take in information, you somehow put that in different locations in the map of your mind. And that is a translation process. And that's when errors occur. That's why some people might look at a text and understand it instantly, because it slots into the right places. And some people might look at a text and not understand it at all, because they don't have that framework to have it slot in. It slots in weird places and they don't understand something. And so that is this concept of mental map, this translation of the text on the page to understanding in your mind. And it's very difficult for me to teach you how to do it, because my mind is mapped differently from your mind. And I don't know where that's why teaching is so hard. Because if a teacher has 30 students, there might be around 15 different mental maps.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 or 3 kids have the same kind of framework of understanding where, they each get it because of this reason. But then the other 3 kids didn't get part A, but they got part B. And then the next 3 kids didn't get anything. And then the next 3 kids are bored because they got everything. And that's why it's so hard. And that's why it's Swadhyay. It's study of the self. And you have to do it. I wish I could do it for you. But that mental mapping of the translation of the information on the page to what it means in your mind, and then forget about how to apply it to your life and all that. Like, I can't even be assured that you got the right information. Nonetheless, are applying it correctly, right? And so that's why it takes a while. And so that's another concept of, that's what some people mean when they say mental mapping. Questions or comments about anything we talked about today? It's kind of meta. I hate going really meta on you, but it's a chapter in the book. It's learning about learning. And if you don't learn how to learn, you're going to be holding yourself back, and then you certainly won't be at the stage of applying it to your life.
So we talked about Swadhyay is about self-study, but one of the topics we talked about was group discussion. If a self-study is like you studying the book yourself,
No, so that's the mistranslation of the book. Okay, so the authors of the book don't know what self-study means. Okay, so Swadhyay is study of the self, or more specifically, you are a soul. So study of the
know
soul.
about yourself.
So studying of the soul means just learning everything about Jainism. So it has nothing to do with studying by yourself. That's what self-study means in America. It means studying by yourself, not with the teacher, not in a group. That's not what Swadhyay is.
Okay.
So that's why what we're doing now, learning in the group, is Swadhyay, because we're studying our souls.
Yeah, it's more appropriate to call it self-discovery than self-study.
Sure.
Yes.
Sure.
Typically, when we want to read the book, at least from my side, don't jump into a chapter. You go through the index first, go through the bullets, go through the high levels, and see what interests you.
Right.
That's one thing. What I also understood is everybody's mind is different, like you were talking about. Some people like to explore and touch the things, or some wants to go really deep into one. And if you just look at yourself and see which part you fit in, that might help you kind of learn about yourself first, so you can apply. So, for instance, in India, when growing up, if you're going through an engineering or something, you're going to memorize a lot of things without understanding,
Yeah.
right? So if your mind is like that, you may have to apply a different technique
Right.
to go through it compared to if you're an R&D guy, PhD guy who wants to just keep going down in one topic. So know yourself where you fit in, and then explore all the options before you can kind of jump through it. Because for me, just open page 1 through 217 never worked in the past.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
So, sorry.
That's good, yeah.
So, question. You know how like Mahabharata, Ramayana, they all have like television, like a show or something. And I think as a kid growing up, it was easy to associate with the stories that are on TV. Is there something like that for like Jainism stories that anyone has found?
We have few stories online,
Few-
but
few.
not.
Some of them are on YouTube. Some of them are.
Yeah,
Like
sure.
the show, like the story.
But it's not a chronological order like
Okay.
Ramayana, but because it's just concept based.
I'm waiting
We have
for-
storytelling from TV.
I'm waiting for Bollywood and Hollywood to find Jainism and tell to make Netflix serials about Mahavir, but it's not happening right now.
You look at Christianity has taken some of this concept and turned it into mainstream songs.
Right.
And people don't even realize that song is mentioning God. Hey God, thanks for giving me all these beautiful things and all of these. They've actually put it into mainstream. So
100%.
if we can,
lot of
if we can
countries-
create songs, it might.
Yeah, a lot of these country songs, they're
Yes.
about God.
Yeah.
And they're like, they're like pop music and stuff like that in it, right?
But
Yeah,
if
we
you
have,
listen to the songs in the temple, they take Bollywood songs
Yes.
Yes.
and they put
Correct.
Mahavir's
That's
lyrics in
right.
it.
Yeah.
That's huge,
And it
that
makes
one.
it more entertaining for everyone.
Yeah, more
Right.
catchy.
Because the people that produce the music, they know what you will remember.
Correct.
What's
Yeah.
called an earworm, right?
Exactly.
So we piggyback off that and we try to encode that information in a way that we'll remember.
It has to be converted into an entertainment form.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's what, and Jain people are good at investing. They'll produce movies, but they know this content will not probably click for entertainment. So they.
I have occasion pined for that stuff, pined for, an entertainment version of Jainism. But after I've done this for a little while, I think that you'll be disappointed when it does come out.
Yeah.
I think you'll be disappointed at how watered down it is. And I think you'll be disappointed at the compromises that they make, that Hollywood or Bollywood might make when they adapt a property for mainstream audiences.
Yeah.
I've come to that conclusion.
Yeah. No, the reason I asked, like, I know there are a lot of like Namrambuni show or channel or whatever on the YouTube and stuff. I just didn't know if there was any like on all the Janma of Mahavir Bhagwan or whatever, like the
That's a good
stories.
point, actually.
If they have anything.
They
out
do
there.
have like stage reenactments of
Yeah,
Mahavir's
but
songs.
I was talking about like like a shows like Ramayana or something like that. It's like chronological order, just talking about Mahavir Bhagwan in like
Chapter
24
of each
episodes.
chapter
and-
is.
Yeah, one janam every
Yeah, one janam,
episode or something. I didn't know if it was out there.
It's a good exploratory. We should all go and
Yeah.
research about it and come back next week and see if we find
Yeah,
something.
that's a good idea. Good idea.
All right, so Layla came in. That means it's time to look at Layla and realize that she has a soul that could be as old as our soul, right? And if you can't see that, then you definitely can't see the soul in a plant or a soul in a cockroach or something like that. You look at Layla and you see her soul, she's not a young soul. Her soul might be older than our soul. It's just wrapped in the body of a young person.
Yeah.
Okay? So look at your children. When you look at your children, they're just like you. Layla, this was your old book.
Yeah.
Tell me what you like about this book.
Well, it has a lot of knowledge in this section.
Yeah, it has a lot of knowledge. What else? Anything else? Tell me why this book is a good way to learn Jainism, as opposed to this book.
Which would you rather pick, this book or this book?
Because that one explains it in more watered down
Okay,
and
easier
less
to read language,
complicated.
less complicated language. That's great. This is your old book?
From last two.
Right. Great. Other questions or comments?
I think one thing that you mentioned at the beginning, knowledge is power.
Francis
Right.
Bacon.
No, just thinking about that, right? I feel like knowledge is potential power, right?
Sure.
It is not power.
You have to act
Knowledge
on
is
it.
potential power, and you have to convert knowledge into action. Then
Right.
it becomes actual power.
That's why
Right.
I am obsessed with improving my life using the principles of Jainism. Not just learning about it, but making my life now better because of it. And that's why I tried what I try to convey to you.
I had a friend who usually had a word applied to before this sentence. He said, applied knowledge is
It's power. Yes, this is
Applied knowledge.
Applied knowledge is power.
From Tattva Sutra, it will be right knowledge. The right knowledge is more important.
Yeah. And if you think about it, technically, we talk about infinity, right? Technically, the only thing that's infinite is knowledge. Everything else revolves around it. It's infinity, like everything we talk about infinity, it's like the core of it is knowledge, which is infinite.
One, knowledge is infinite.
Yeah, exactly. That's
But
what.
space is. Other areas are infinite, right?
Time is.
Time, yes.
Yeah. But ultimately, it all
Yeah.
boils to knowledge of
Yeah.
knowing those things as well, right?
Right.
So,
But as a group, what we could do is, Tim, you can assign a group of people and say, hey, maybe visualize this one or mind map this one out and see how that looks.
Right.
If you wanna kind of put a homework.
Well, you're in charge of it now because you have it. So whenever you bring up something that we should do, you have to take charge. Otherwise, it's not going to get done.
Yeah.
But we're happy to support you.
you know, by the way, there's this book called Sapiens. I don't know how many of you heard about it
Yeah,
or know
that's
about
right.
it.
Yeah.
So that book, he is converting that entire book into a comic series
Whoa, very nice.
that you could actually hand it over to your kids.
That's another
It's a
big
big
book.
It's a big,
right?
big,
It's
fat
like
book,
like
right?
1,000 page.
And that book is getting converted into comics that kids can actually read it, right?
What is it about?
Oh, it's about human history.
Yeah.
Yeah, you-
Evolution of
Yeah.
like just Homo sapiens.
Yeah.
It is out there, the comic version.
It is out there. Yes. Yuval Noah Harari, if you guys know, he's a very
Yeah.
popular author. And it's a fascinating book.
Lots of cool concepts in that.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for your time this week. Thanks to everybody, to all our
Thanks,
friends
Tim.
online too. Really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That's all.
Okay,